the IDF bombed the hell out of Gaza again last night, breaking a ceasefire. This is following the Israeli breaking of the ceasefire terms when they said they were not going to leave the Philadelphia corridor. Hamas has been negotiating or attempting to negotiate in the context of this ceasefire for the next stage, and Israel decided they had enough of that. And the reason, of course, has nothing to do with the hostages, because we know from the very beginning that Hamas had offered a deal for the hostages over a year and a half ago. It has everything to do with Netanyahu wanting Ben-Gvir back into the cabinet, and he has joined. It has everything to do with the right wing in the further right wing in Israel refusing to not have attacks on Gaza. Their delusional dream of completely ethnically cleansing Gaza. The notion of putting hotels there or whatever it is.
And also it's Ramadan, so the fact that Israel is bombing these folks, and it was, according to reports, mostly women and children. There are images of dead babies if you want to find them on the internet from last night. But Israel's been blocking all aid that has been coming into Gaza since March 2nd. So like that was their attempt to pressure Hamas into basically releasing the remaining hostages without getting anything in exchange, and trying to torpedo the negotiations because they know that they have the firepower on their side. But they had already been trying to starve them, and this was their basically attempt to accelerate the breaking of the temporary ceasefire, or Trump should refer to it as the PR ceasefire, because he got what he wanted out of the in time for the inauguration.
And from the very beginning, it has been clear that there was no way for Israel to kill all Hamas without essentially killing all 2 million residents of Gaza. And Blinken said as much when he left. Whatever number it was that they killed, supposedly 15,000 or so, more than 15,000 have joined to Hamas to replace them, which is obvious. It was obvious. Here is White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. Or actually, let's first take this clip. Gaza doctor Feroz Sidwa describes the carnage that is in the wake of the Israeli bombing.
The ministry says over 300 Palestinians have been killed after the Israeli military carried out a number of attacks overnight. I'm joined now by Dr. Feroz Sidwa, who's at the Nasser Medical Complex in Khan Yunis. Thank you so much for joining us. What have you witnessed overnight?
So just utter carnage and destruction overnight. I was here in Gaza a year ago during the peak of the fighting in Khan Yunis, and the mass casualties back then looked exactly like the mass casualty that I saw today. Mostly children, the other half are mostly women, and occasionally there's a man, but I'm pretty sure the man has nothing to do with any of this that's going on. I did 6 operations overnight. Half of them were in small children, so probably 6 and below. I wasn't exactly sure their ages, but it's probably about 6 and below. Most of them are going to go on to die, unfortunately. I'm told, I don't know for sure, but I'm told that about 40 bodies were brought to the morgue directly. And, but yeah, it was just utter carnage, as usual, when you drop bombs on tents. That's what happens.
Was there any warning that this was coming?
Not that was given to me directly, but and not that I don't think our NGO knew about it, because they would have warned us. But no, I don't believe so.
In terms of your ability to act, you said you've been there a year ago. You've been there for a little while in your current stint there. What level of supplies are reaching Gaza in general, but your hospital in particular?
In general, food is becoming more and more scarce. I actually haven't eaten meat since the first day I was here, which was March 6th. And that's not to complain, it's just to point it out. We've been eating rice and lentils every day, and we're eating better than anybody else in the Gaza Strip. We have money. There's just no protein is available. Clean water is also not available. But, actually before this mass casualty event, the emergency room in the hospital was starting to get overwhelmed by gastroenteritis cases, just because, again, nobody has any ability to desalinate water to get clean water of any kind. So diarrheal disease, nausea, vomiting is getting to be so severe that actually we had a patient's heart stop because of it in the ICU 2 nights ago. And thankfully, she's still alive at the moment. But again, she's going to go on to die because of the situation. In terms of the hospital, right now, the hospital that I'm at, Nasser Medical Complex, has surgical supplies. But just one incident like this would overwhelm any hospital in the United States. I was a resident during the Boston Marathon bombing, and that it was an utter disaster. And it was 1/10 of what we saw here today, and what we'll probably see twice today, probably 3 times the next day. So it's impossible for any hospital system to keep up with this, even in the first world.
The prime.
I mean, I don't know what there is to say. This is clearly just, it's sadistic, ethnic cleansing, genocide, whatever you want to call it.
Genocide. I mean, this is an attempt at a final solution for these people. Let's be clear here. I don't know. I don't want to be inflammatory, but I also don't want to shy from saying what it is, because when Trump said that, when he met with Netanyahu, what was it, over a month ago at this point, and he said 1.7 million people in Gaza, and he came out with that figure, which I'd never heard before, because prior to the genocide starting, it was over 2 million Palestinians that were in the Gaza Strip, and some have fled, but that still betrays the truth that he's probably hearing behind the scenes with classified information, is that hundreds of thousands have been slaughtered, and now they're trying to starve them to death, and doing it under a new administration.
Here is White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirming that the Trump administration was consulted by Israel and gave them the green light.
Well, the Trump administration and the White House were consulted by the Israelis on their attacks in Gaza tonight. And as President Trump has made it clear, Hamas, the Houthis, Iran, all those who seek to terrorize not just Israel, but also the United States of America, will see a price to pay. All hell will break loose. And all of the terrorists in the Middle East, again, the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, Iranian-backed terror proxies in Iran themselves should take President Trump very seriously when he says he is not afraid to stand for law-abiding people. He is not afraid to stand up for the United States of America and our friend and our ally Israel. And we know that these successful defensive strikes that took place over the weekend against the Houthis in the Red Sea were indeed successful. We took out some of their leaders, and the Defense Department is set to continue with this campaign if the Houthis continue with their retaliatory measures. The president is going to stand for the navigation, freedom of navigation of our seas, which is a very basic principle that unfortunately the previous administration refused to stand for, and that's why we are in this mess in the Middle East in the first place. President Trump inherited a lot of problems, Sean, because of the incompetence and the weakness of the Biden-Harris administration, but he is focused on fixing them, and our allies and our adversaries better take him seriously.
All right. First of all, they're not our seas.
It's funny to say that mess in the Middle East and then be like, but it's our seas. Well, it's like, is it a mess in the Middle East or is it ours?
And I should say, and I am in no way happy to remind people, but the Biden administration pounded the hell out of the Houthis in Yemen. And to be fair, it was in direct response to the Houthis attacking some U.S. vessels. But all of this is just sort of like, I guess the Trump administration trying to pivot from we're against war, but we like to bomb. We're okay with more bombing in Gaza.
The aggression from the Houthis doesn't come from lawlessness. It
Right.
comes from them wanting to stop a genocide.
They are trying to use, so it's not, the Red Sea is not ours. It is off the coast of different countries, but that includes Yemen. So they have a right to implement a blockade to stand in solidarity with their Palestinian neighbors who have no friends clearly in the West. They're going to stand up for them, and that is the imperial
Barely
power
in the Middle East.
in the area. It's
Understand, too, that this really does feel like Trump gearing up for either a U.S. Attack on Iran or an Israeli attack on Iran. There's a real sense that they're laying the groundwork. He's decided I no longer have to pretend like I'm going to do the peace thing.
Oh, it's peace through strength. And by peace, I mean all these slaughtered little children on your feed. Tucker, to your point, Tucker Carlson tweeted something out last night, which normally I wouldn't take notice of, but I found it scary that he tweeted basically saying that a strike on Iranian nuclear sites will almost certainly result in thousands of American deaths, and basically criticizing, rightly for the first time in his life, the idea of doing that with Iran, which makes me concerned that he's not getting through behind the scenes if he's saying this publicly.
In a moment, we're going to be talking to Austin Kocher, political and legal geographer studying immigration enforcement, assistant research professor at Syracuse University, and author of the Austin Kocher Substack. We're going to be talking about what the Trump administration is doing in terms of deporting people who are presumably hardened criminals, and doing so in many instances against court orders. We'll talk about that in a moment. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.